The Jazz Symphonic Glass Ear, Part 1 of Part 2.
Part I. Son of the man of a new vision in the dark mystery of reality, he quests for the truth of his self. He hear himself saying, I am one within myself, the mist of my bones is the man mad about his mind movements. My mind is the last of its kind, and the bones of an awkward skull playing with the last day's breath of the tongue rooted to a wind from the chamber of my lungs, where the extraordinary fire of the galaxies wait the orders everything to strike their existence, finally full of the suburb of stars. When the seahorse of 1,000 crazing, willing to be fulfilled by the frills that trill the ammunition of a tropically soiled rain, dislocated by the telephony of a crying sleet, created by the wholehearted countercurrent burst of a grenade that weight the pulling pin of the tenderness, tortured by the adorable devolution found in the void of a scream, jumping the extraordinary inspiration of the eating motion of fire, blazing like an orchestra of intertwining tenderness, plated by the courage of age, dislocated and dumbfounded by the inspiration of an assault issued by the momentum of understanding. The old odd object, odorless as an old note, off limit to the spontaneous behavior in the lonely poet, with the ecclesiasticism of his eccentricities as a way of life in the livelong new young heroes who waits the warning for doing battle when the organized cooperation of a conformity that blunt senses human purpose, hands busy in the burden of its own boredom, blind to the propaganda that indicate the terrifying values of a normality. Your outrageous situation pushed into a manifestation of the self as hero to do battle to save yourself from the baffled confusion of being alienated, to save yourself from slavery masquerading as sanity, to solely go the way of the lonely hero, rootless and neurotic for the meaning of being human, when institutions created for the masses have failed them, when the collectivized society of a totalitarian, which is the only logical consequence of a lost selfness that goes to where the socially insane gather to plot their revenge against the submission of passive mass man, they seeks to set them free as if they are tied to the deck of a wreck, heart broke to the bone and alone on their own. They shall be saved by the few brave down to surround the waste place, to confound and finding in freedom a form for mapping out the emotional poetry that play in their lives beneath the sun. Isn't all that we know? The distant glow tells us that we lack places to go and different times to be exposed by the nervous vocabulary and the tongue-tied syntax of the syntax place on the smoking lit end of a butt found in the ashtray of the homeless need to gather cans from the discarded waste that can be sold to pay for the soul's need to play out it union with the body born to bind the flesh of all flesh, fishing for funds, fathering and for finding the nonsense of a nipping at the noise of the new nose, nodding its snazzy sneeze, snipping snap snap snap, and black rat that ready round the runabout that goes running round the rim of a tin of found fish caught in the faraway sea of jazzy Japan, jeering jolly the just jointed to the job of an island's mentality, where the jolly joker jest and conjure the knowable notice pinned to the soul that knows now the blow. That snows full of the laughter of rain of the glorified self, selling itself to the highest bidder in the marketplace, where shadows are dancing on the wall and all the curses crosses are wounded. They weep for a peace long forgotten by force, falling from the farm where is kept the keen ed kindling, culling away all afterthoughts toward every envoy of envy written on the back of God's hand. What are they doing in heaven today? Taking piece by force, piece by piece they pair to pierce the membrane of a holy and hollow hunger. hanging on the tip of the tongue that whisper the warmth of a would-be summer bracing breeze blowing sideways into the crack of the sun. This I remember as if it was 10,000 years ago when the summer gave into winter falling over the last town that keep until a flock of blackbirds heading south over the backbone of the town's memories of place in the dirt that dirty by mark of dingy dingoes and New Guinea singing dogs doing their business by the barking winds blowing backward through the town's alienated alleys of the light poles standing as solitary soldiers waiting the rush hour of rounds horses and hybrid hyenas humming their hunger for peace in the wide world of horrors willing to sell you their sexual scented scenery. Secretly they will keep your sexual needs secluded till it is time to forget you for the next John who will jab his Johnny deep within the slit and risk a broken rubber drips of sons never to be born as sure as priests or prostitutes of the glorious gods ever ready to penetrate your heart with the cross to tell you that we live in a sinful and fallen world, to tell you that gods are not to blame for the suffering that man must endure, to tell you that the kingdom will come. Hail Mary, full of grace, blessed is the fruit of your womb, Mother Mary, pray for me. I offer you the body and blood of my Lord, and for the sake of your passion, O Jesus, what is justified in your name is the calling of cults, as the niggers of the country. Wicca is seen as wicked, the counter-cult intellectuals interfere in the inter-worshipping of some other man's God. O Jesus, we are told that you live within us. Such a thing can be for the believers, for they live in the Trinity. Queen of the Holy Rosary is Islam, to be on earth as it is in heaven is Scientology, the flesh of you, and Soka and Buddhism and Hinduism followers doomed to fall beneath the shadow of the cross in death. Let my spirit protect before the holy gate. If such a thing be, then let it walk the picket line for peace, for religion is the weight of the people it placated buys the time at Novocaine. The pains of life, it is a band-aid that cover the wounds made by the insane motion of living. Our lives as a beast that knows itself not capable of not being able to be good without the threat of the God's promise of a greater good after the body had worn itself out. So Mother Nature, pray for me, O Queen of the trees, dust to dust of the dead flesh that we shall be. Let me feed the bounty of life, for in life we have feast full fondly on caged chickens and free-range cattle turn beef. We have feast on the lead ham of pigs that pollute the watershed in the backwoods of Mississippi. Sun shining upon the absurdity of action where the blood from yesterday is already dried on the approach of tomorrow, and my hands fly off into an empty cry, crying its wisdom of praying mantis perpetual in their invention of ceremonials dance peddled in the streets of an alcoholic salvation, saving the unforgettable lamps of mosques built on the ruins of an ecstatic egg blooming on the tree of a misplacement of the age of men's courage, testy when the earth nursing its gravity finally finding the force in which to drop an apple onto the head of victory, hard won by the torn wave of air, creating the monarchy scattered and snapping a beautiful assassins turn back momentum for the condensation found in the rigged sea that ebb and flow toward the vineyard of trumpets blowing, the beautiful wind sung heard in the ears of a bloodthirsty scream, settling in the dream of an unconfessed lizard that licks its tongue triumphantly before the sun's instant vapor, warming the eternal written words of fire sublime and compassionate toward the birth of a boy still attached by the umbilical cord and foreskin of a circumcised dawn, where the last hero fall down to his human silent raising in the wake of a screaming forgiveness that breaks so easy on his oppressors. Industrialism that eat into the capitalist's consciousness till they become one and the same of a mechanical revulsion, and they cannot know honest even if it bit them. In the ass of their industrialized society where the technology-oriented of the abstract economic question is getting drunk successfully on their exploitation of nature for what the meat market can boldly bear, while the protest of a rude awakening of the romanticism kept in the pockets of poets his protagonists, or digging out the materialistic flaws of democracy where poets are criminal prophets, rebellious messiahs that call you to follow them into the new attitude to break open the stereotypes that you have bred into. Am I a gay black poet or a black gay poet? It depends on what face you know of me. Face to face, my skin poet to poem, sexual self let loose to juice up bodies wet with sweat, salty to taste the dew of your skin, your hottest spots pining power piled as high as a pubis from which you dish out the commands that threaten to derail the plain song, sonic soaring strong with a stout wind, strategists blowing form across the weary way. Work with me, still I'm willowed down, worn away by your willingness to please the God of my father's father, and farther back to the gods of the fist. A forest where forms of leaves follow the fading sun, plants contend for a life as do man contend for our place in the world. We have the war doors after someone's God because man likes to collect, likes to corner his pets. Science is the leash around the gods. Next, when we take them out for a walk through the midnight streets full of secret senses fit for the dark hour where man loses himself in a cat fight with the cotton cable criss-crossing the congenial cone, wanting our sleep from within, we peep the waiting of the world. When our walk is done, we poets weep for the work of the house broken, gods not allowed to feel at home, prayed to only on Sunday, and kept locked away till company comes and you take them out and comb their hair, dress them fair, posed at the dinner table with care, you're wholly on display for the day. The quandary poet with an apprehension coming from his muse hypnosis, he slipped back into the episodes of thoughts where he is manipulated by the schizophrenia voices and he cannot recognize the diagnosis of his illness. He is only abnormal. In the biochemistry processing of the language of the Lord, his poems are interpretational singing of the auditory hallucinations of the gods. Schizophrenic angels who had drawn to poets speaks in poetry from the pit of their curiosity about man, as sure as the motivation of mathematics is to the speech of the gods, and poetry is divine revelation. The scientific revolution is afoot in the land, and it linger long across Newton and Locke, looking deeply down into the enlightenment that nature is God with poets as her priests, and if you only knew how much they love you, you would weep to fulfill their wants, running wild among the erosion of religious dying and decaying. A non-objectivity and full of Vatican rituals that cannot maintain, cannot be-sustain without the poet's help, for they purge the past and quicken the future. They can free you from the boredom of your disbelief. They can fill you up with the breath of the God that looks after you, that do your bidding in the marketplace of the world. They will not leave you to fend for yourself, to fall by the spirituous wayside where the winners of the race are dying off because they prayed to a dead God. Run the race with your grace. Beside you there will be times when you will need the poet's love to comfort you, and just a poem from him will make your radical vagaries understood by the body that is you, by the bones, by the built of your sexual superstitional memories that can help you find the ritualized bump that informs your God, sitting on the pseudo-religion stump of science at the mercies of the individual innocence of our generations, moving through life as a wave breaking on the shores of our discontents, making the collective culture history of our memories that have nothing more and our personal myth of being a consensus in the certainty that we live our lives fundamental as one fallen from heaven, when it is whereinto we find ourselves moralizing in our narrative's history of the reminiscence of the fundamental fall, a religious public myth held by the many. This is my personal narrative out I unraveled jealously by my bound with the poetic soul of the self and the analog I am, as I will myself to be within reasons of the limits of breath and mind. I am too heavy to fly, I am one who can cry. I spy the outside world as a thing that I can reason why. I am moved by the muscle of music. I am hip, young, and hungry for the holy bite into my flesh, and you will find me strong as a song sung on the tongue. My wrongs eyes keep locked away safe from the exportations of the young. The sky wept when I was born. I am the creator of good, the father of songs and poems. In doing my duty, who am I? I am the self frustration of urban life. I am the irrational thrust that seeks to remake society in my image. I am the gratuitous acts of crime carried out day in and day out for no other reason than I have the time. I am the long lost son of rebellion. I am the conscious control of a gun. Crisp, I crack the bullet with your name on it. I am the committed responsibility of a sensory impression of the effort toward a fake emotion that roll to fondle the dishonest abstractions of devotion. I am the new attitudes of misunderstanding the guilty trial of indifference. I seeks to understand man's base nature, to free him from the drudgery of the everyday. Modern man is made a prisoner of the things that he has earned by the hardy work of his hands. Has he learned that to be a man of contentment in today's world is to hide yourself among the masses as one of many, continent with what the rules of society that seeks to control the wayward soul most dictates. I am the rage develop against the frustration of society. I will face the judgment of guilt and sin by the prosecutor of criminal acts committed against me, by the stereotype of the priest who call me the sinner for going against the certainties of rules with their rigid preconceptions of freedom. The dignity of my destiny grows with the assumption of responsibility for my fellow man. I am the blasphemous of the worthy Christ. I am the stranger in a world of estrangement, detached from the very conventional culture that will enslave in the tomb of normality. I will not be locked away. I will not be contained in the house of the insane. Oh, I am mad with mind, not land. This is a raging of a mind that fight itself still. I till the soil sweet for a new growth, grounded in the knowing that the soul is wounded but not weak in its wanting. Where is Rimtod with his madness? Where is Christopher Smart with his madness? Where is Blake and Burns and Byron Hart, Crane, G.M. Hawkins and Lancey, all madmen, all making their way mindfully, milling around the words of their insane songs? We belong, no, they are gone, the way of the dead flesh. Madness live in the working of their hands, and my madness is kept at bay by the hands of popping pills. Citalopram, hydrobromide and olanzapine 40 milligrams empower me. Here therein is no shame. Such things are only for the sane son's heart, the only child in this system where the paganism of Palermo stone break on the footsteps of Kafer, sitting in words by the way of the grand Caucasian consensus, squandered by the blowtorch of a hissing funnel, multicolored stamped of gods, exhausted by the solidity of a dazzling tender water, where desires of possibility supporting the absolute climate of a sharpened wind's precision, and the gods have forsaken the birds of de facto broken down region of the last religion, describing irreconcilable angry, and have made man the outcast with his prostrations of the sacrificial prayers in the fashion of a delivered message's dominant dialogue, disappearing day by day into the human mentality of a widespread auditory hallucination, telling us to be kind to each other under the profound auditory rules of the Old Testament, under the old Babylonian objective wisdom, addressing the formalistic solidity, sumptuous and Frenzied lightning foaming a call brushed by the skin of the forever water that washes away the fragile face of the behavioristic needs with the recognition of a godly pounding Odysseus heart marvelous and forever supporting the wild impulses of an enraged throat where words bloom beyond the strong logic. Madness of a giant radiant absolute wish to belong under the supporting roof of the to not break the cockhole of a brain growing beside the sensual sensitive sea of the mentioned mentality burst in the belly of a radiant laughter of yellow which ruthlessly dominate the grid of a dark and withdrawal. From all that you guess will be the death of you fall into form from the formal answer characteristic of the lost question playing pranks and looting the mores rogues of the subsidized machinery of the popular phlogistic phobic police pounding the beat of a burning candle cradled in the arms of the creditor that holds the notes of your soul in cold blood shall he douse your heated passions with the money paid to the informer poets that have betrayed in a hell of hypocrisy the poets as fallen archangels of the individual looming egotistical longing for fighting the dull commercial conformity daily brought and sold to the common weakness that it engendering the limitation of the poor who cry out for quarrelsome quantity over qualified quality while the poet cry out in disgust for a serious self-reflection of themselves as victims as spectators under the social codes. Of being a good citizen the poorest of the poor are too busy being poor to be excited by the execrable excesses of the self-righteous riches of the rich. Of the bulging bourgeois belly-birthing leaning leaders of society's official view of the gratification of itself while the poet venturing far from the conventional to find himself find that he is alone in the symbolizing myth of the worldly real world woven wiry around the wounds of the naked. Cities verging on the insanity of glass and steel of the immortal boredom of mountains of bricks while in the nocturnal shadows in the green soul of the forest of the wilderness mysteriously divine in its strikingly similarities of the madman's attempt to murder the daylight of the granite eye. Of a stature to the flesh of the war dead swollen in the half-light irrepressible tornado torn and tattered by the barefoot voice of a mirror relaxing its reflections of anger sleeping in the armored flower assuming the position of freedom under the embrace of the sun's storeroom of alchemy found in the confinement of a screaming rain with its generosity of rusting the machines of rotten flesh with their sterile spectacle attitudes of regrets that rest in the vast pathetically ghost of the host's mirage behold the hideousness of the mythical mysterious monsters of the rival to the state that take their castration and strive beside the universal dream of man's myth his psychic needs solitary and sedentary against the calamities of the primordial unconsciousness of the chaos of the libido poet that fight the battle for us always tormented psyche fighting the monistic monolithic monster of the state is struggle toward the animalism harmony relieving itself in the mouth of man's pettiness beneath the statuesque beauty of the sky where the battle to discover a meaningful identity of the lonely voyagers who find society shallow and repellent is in love with the terrible unbearable parable mother of the dark self and the terrible father of tyrannical authority suppressing rebellion against the status quo of the state of an order world in need of its imposing will of unvoiced scandals that require the people to prostrate themselves sprawled flat beneath the bitter brightness of the boredom of our daily lives in the hesitant flow of a recalcitrant old color ancient in a trafficking ancient as a shipwreck in an age of flight across the difficult metamorphosis of rain clouds quivering in a corner of the inlay bluish blush bluing and busting by the bipedal communication of the frightened fragile gifts of the clarity of the two-edged sky look down upon me, look among me, lean on me, I am your Cain as I am to blame for the words I weave look lockjawed. At my local musing about the god of this and the who that do the what to you that would woo your woes and what is cool to cold to lose the blues that besets you. Here is the nearly new news to move mountains of meanings to. Here is the morning moving its motion at the mentioning of the moon fading from view. Do not lose yourself in yourself. Pay dues to the outsider, the UAC and the inner working of your flesh that fed for a foul of famished fun of friends firm fluid and free in its flow for you doing when the mind's eyes film everything it sees and the mind's ears records down to the last word in the world and that word is God. Old and odorous the opossum hunting in the night, the white-tailed rabbit feeding on the grass has dug a den in the yard. Spring is hard this year, hard on the ears it bite by chill and tender growth culled by the frost that steals across the garden. Eliot got it right about the April of the year full of remembered fears. Of the 18th and 19th day of the dead spring lurch and lunch lush toward love but death leak into the fold leering about the hind end of cold from its northern blow below 32 degrees. April snow is wet with wants of the weak warmth the red bricks breathe back into the air. Where is the April of my youth, a carefree meandering of group growth? The tulips purple bloom, bees are back and soon to be bugs bountiful. The blackbirds return to St. Louis, the blue jays coloring the sky. We spring babies bloom in age with each April new crow. The poet cried, but I spy a gentle natured by her sweet name known April. A lady, alas, a young man dressed in his best, caught in the urgency of spring. The show of green seen again in the land. For poets there is no way out of his soul. He cannot set it aside and still stay friends with the gods. Precious is the time he spent to himself, time when the gods rest their innocence and get down to their insistence, babble about the state of man under the moral light of science, caught in the intellectual battlefield of the landscape where politics war against preaching as if like poetry warring against songs sung sullenly and signally to catch you up in the roundabout rhythmic beat of bodies bouncing off each other's in the nightclub of the darkness deaded by a full moon. Spring has sprung its sparing with the weather of winter wanting to hang on. Yes, spring skied and skid across the Arizona landscape, smelling of old Spanish skin and the accent of Indians in the prime of their lives, living out their days in an ancient desert, full of life's last request. A natural expression is April when it takes possession of the land. April is all-encompassing and profound in its achievement of affirming new growth from the old wintering in the earth. April, Abril, and April open all buds unfolding, folding open its beautiful buds bolden. Their bounty be my spring lady, my scented young man's body beaming his fancy. You have the lady of loves whose hemline is flapping in a warm breeze. You have my spring youth of the young man feeling his oaks in the strength of his body, ready to give his sex in the season of birds, ready to birth their young. As old as you have forever young in the land, yearly rebirthing yourself. Wait, you hurriedly await your coming on the heel of a March wind wandering through the tail end of winter wanting to hang on. Winter grudgingly moved on. All the April babies sing your songs. Casanova, the of love, Muddy Water, and Billie Holiday, the of song, and Shakespeare, the song of poesy. Long through the years come my spring babies, ever being born. We celebrate your coming with this song sung flowing in a gilded abode. I am not alone, filled with few tourists unseen but unknown in the spyglass where the cold universal winds blowing their ligature light toward an eager eye focused on their Shingon's shining shipping slip of a sun to behold the gentle silver temple of fighting rocks that or dropped into the wanting water of a gigantic bird-like struggle, biting the blazing blue top to the bloody shoulders of trees, forcing the sea to give up its recently dead ground in the watery sanctuaries where the pigeon Guillemot performed the funeral rite as an offering to the gods. of the sea oceans and off ion excluded by the re-entering of the waves into a silver sap of the night, savage and thorny and as exuberant as a forgotten memory as the rare laughter of an immense speaking in tongues of a looped-off courage of the victorious silent feeding. Off the momentous vehement witnessing the concerting of it when the suffice surface of a staved day is the dealer of the manger encrusted with bamboo and luggage both confused by the trailing traveling of the future to a place where appear the null scale of the weight of the world the last time that I saw this word on the tongue of an island making love to the warm water, the rocks of the river bank, its brother, this everybody knows in their dreams that blows the cold generative processes of weather with its non-subjective manner toward the man-made temple where gods of correction spoil us with too much lazy love, and we wonder if what we are saying in their name is the real income that will seal our souls in the advancement of heaven. Okay, so we are wrong on this account, and it's time that we find the lost blue carrying the scrambled words of a long-forgotten prayer with its inconsistencies. Caught like silent bent butts of scant cigarettes littering the streets of an early sundry Sunday dawn, watching over us for much of the week. The churches sleep, waiting for you, waiting to hear the hallelujah of the soldiers of stained glass that have witnessed the importance of a magical jealousy of a miracle. What did you hear in the forest of sainthood, of the dark forest where the poets feed off the dim light of growth, thick and tight in its feeding of the full belly born in a year of starvation, where the iniquity of fire in the bones is unsure of its own burning, where the mistrustful lies spoken to Jeremiah blows away the cover that contained them? What did you hear when you drew near the millennium cross that require you to suspend the recognition of rational truth and go with your hands full of faith? Can you now hear the passive mass man that had forgotten how to define himself under the dilemma of normality in a society of the conditional confusion of being an individual? The earnest essence of the hero's violence is the ultimate saturation situation of the internal intensity of his allogeneic alluvial alienation in a state of crisis, where his poems are a manifestation of his desire to belong blindly and brutally. He burns the assertion of his human dignity, burns bound round the waist of a place where his soul of the gospel of gloom in the tomb of his cloistered convictions that the messiness of the rigors of being human lay hissing in the heart, where his piety with its constancy of faith in being one against the rarest stone state that swayingly swear to the saints, collapsing their worn wire wings into the cupped hands of the petition position of a begging prayer, when the flesh is vivid as a chant on the lips of the righteous with their hands cupped in prayers, where the trapped air burns with the words that take to the wings of memories. The world shall gather its seasons into one and function as an assassin of flowers, head heavy as Horus with his wisdom of the obelisk, wanting to the high heaven, handwritten by the beautiful tenderness, tending to the tonal laughter of the last angel with its summoned purity of an inheritance honored and horned as a hired hand, hooking up, doing the biting of the benign blind gods, knotting together the throbbing of drums of man's destiny from the divine silent, executing the vain question of their increased excitement for the voices heard by Saul against the love held by David and Jonathan, their wild Nebiim. For he who is he is he who he say he is, the father of the angels, the fallen feather once flung far afield to the feeling, feeding off the fending out of against the unworkableness, historical chaos, value of deceit, presenting it evidence as obdurately as the calculated civilized society of the modern world, where a non-laugher gushed forward from victorious GI tears born thunderstruck beneath the fun of social pressures to be one with the ruling rules of the political structure of a two-party system that champions the woes of the middle class, and not a mouthful of woeful words for the practicing poor, straightfully struggling and stripped of the density of their dignity in the Richest country of the working Western world that will pay billions to feed wars wage against the oil-rich Muslims, an ancient war of religion for the souls of men. But if it was as simple as all that, the gods do not pat us on the head and say, "Good boy," to us. Their pets, their domestic animal, they watch from the high heaven, and surely they laugh, they hoot and holler, while the angels hang their heavy heads hard by the foolishness that we cannot escape as human is as human does under the sun stripe of it. God, and this battle is never won. You cannot beat a man to his death with the Bible and then call him saved. So we use booms, boasting, bombs busting in air, scaring the foreign cities where youth is sacrificed for some greater good in the minds of men. A tragic death that we cannot be taken back, as once you know yourself you cannot but forget the who you was when the phenomenon of you in the world first began, when the first concept of the self was made known to yourself and you said, "I am likened to this longing, I am full of the anxiety of the flesh, I am the me that nobody knows, no matter where I go I am signally alone in my skein of stimuli, I am my only emergency, a walking world of cells working in united unison." The mystery of yourself fixed in the resplendent respective body with all of its truthful trivialities and grandeur woven into the telling total representation of the you keep secret from admirers, you who is subjected to the trivial tribal trials of the flesh and must handle them with confinable courage and a kind of wishful wisdom common to the godly good man who believe in the numbing nobility of the gods, that knows that each man carry within his genes the primitive pattern of his forefather. Thus is the dead reborn in every man, in each integrated individuality of the self that is true to the self that must come to challenge the anti-human man-made world where the poet's strength of will is pitted against the state of commercial commerce to sell even the flesh for a prideful price, when the economic enterprise of the noise-making machines enslave us with their delusions of grandeur. We lose our instincts and passions and idiosyncrasies. We become one of the mass many who must raise to do the duty of meat for hire, and we as men lose out our capacity for self-determination and thereby our power to create. In such a time it is left to the poet to penetrate the inner frustrations of the man who had given over his soul to the machines. It is the poet, ever a hero, who must fight the notion that the soul of man is a cash value commodity to be sold in the marketplace of the square and church, where we do as we are told for the good of the society that knows it, can control and mold us into the cold citizens who above all else must follow the rotting rules of the stale state and stay well within the cozy warmth our boring boxes, where we have manually manipulated race against race, man against woman, gay against straight, rich against poor, young against old, smart against the common man that seem not to know that he is under the control, that he is losing his unique identity by doing what everyone does, not what he ought to do for the true salvation and fulfillment of his soul. It is left to the artist to show us the way of the spirit fulfillment in a life well lived, and not be led as an ambulatory machine made of flesh and bones of the state. It is left to the sensitivity of the artist to combat the petty tyrants that men can be in their drudgery and endless bureaucratic immoralities. The artist must be ever skeptical, ever living in the moment of the now while he creates, as if that is all there is. He must seek space, must break through the stone walls of imposed laws that seeks to damn him and that confines him as a madman speaking to madmen. Sung with its seated hands reaching far into the Daphnia darkness, where the son of Hermes is singing his songs of the dry land to the immolators of the Brit-laden sky, bricked over cities where Icarus fly above, endlessly circling within the nosy noise of the city hero. Hear the middle warning of the deviltry blooming its deep deceit to eat in your mother's arms of the forbidden fruit sweet leap into the graveyard of mosquitoes on the skin of the arm where the nameless tongue of the dirt cannot be washed away by the nevertheless rain that linger recklessly on the included insult sobbing conversationally after all these years of being weary of the interesting difficulty of being human in the modern world where the saxophone of your breath is blowing an alien wind full of your glories when you are rushing on your run toward the mystical secrets of hot blood burning in the veins of the wide-eyed controversy of wrenching psyche from the dualism achieved by the bitter blood that rush feverishly past the overheated notion that there is but one God feeding the tingle beneath the skin of the shrublands where the consciousness of the embodiment of the material body reinforcing its very existence with the cults that caught the individuality of cities where an invasion from the north wind washes over the pseudostructure of the soul of men born out of the song of the despair of poetry inalienable and interchangeable by the meaningful metaphors, depth of momentous motion, all benevolence, and rarely gnarled by the knowable delirious fidelity strung on the secondary secret illuminate innocence of the science of a sick self in the grip of spatializati on the absolute absence of God's man absurdity is front and counter center. In his strangled struggle to achieve some meaning of the self, no longer do we think that the gods shall save us from ourselves in the strictness of a question where God is the answer. We treat nature as our mother in the strictness of a question where science is the answer. We treat nature as our decoration with its tragic action struggling to achieve the customary delusion of lesser men who are caught in the daily pleasures that keep them occupied, keep them sedate, calculating the enormous commandment of the state that smite the stranger of an individual divinity perishing by the less impetuous principle of the complexities of consciousness caught in the seducing light of the TV, caught by the sexual pleasure of a full belly mixed and fixed for the free fiery piety found in the face of a grace that stray into the majesty longing perpetuating itself into the new millennium of a possibility found amount the selection of the civilized centuries enormously drunk on the enology of a great group with the sterility and frustration of the modern man groping in the darkness of a crimson criminal night sun. Of a violent depression for its own combustion burning away the last coffee-colored odor saturate stricken by a swollen vein where blood flows its way to the wind saxophone heard by saxicalus growth in the death of the swamp's odor playing a symphony's movement to the distance motion of a time-worn-out tale, that smell of the sun burning itself brightly alive when you come around the dead history that remain full of the stale voices that live in the Bible of our most slow belief out of season where the unbeknown wisdom clinging slippery to the stubbornly vernacular of a goddamn he done me wrong. Gather your newspapers where the news falls like stones made of words swollen in the bellies of corpses tangled in the history of memories knotted around the tombstones that acts as a resting place for weary birds coalescing into a nuclear sentimental key where China sleep the long dragon's tail of chopsticks peddle as lies spoken around the red season huddled beside the frightened falls history that pierced the last ancient wisdom known to be breathing itself full of the benevolence mythopoetic strength that persists in its athletic pride where the landscape of science is dissecting the possibility that gods exist in the knowledge of a cell of a butterfly to discern their particular personalities as pure as the fog that intersects the green words of the perched top utmost dreams of a morning losing its sounding distant Of a faraway lie consecrated by the effervescence incorruptible mirage of the purple dawn walking the sky of an introspected surprise in the eye of a siren's howling its way to the emergency of the combatant murder by the innocence of a guilty nature guilty of eating the last glass of a 50 stories building swaying in the gripping wind of the great smoldering clouds disappointed when facing their reflection hung in the window where the Jesus juice of a commander's goodness of voices spoken in the ear of the dead wood of furniture opulent and non-miraculous in its punctured grains running toward the center of the earth when trees die they go to full wood or rot along in the forest of tomorrow the song of their falling need not be heard by the human ear unless you be one who think that human hair the center of the universe and that all existence depend on the store Dick with his thin top lip and blonde nose and tiny Dick following me around the store where the religion of commerce keeps its stronghold tight by the pity that show us how we are doing it. Wrong turn me on and I will return the favor and we can do it on our own when the water of sex whistle the sweat of a butch speaking easy in the darkness of a nightclub embracing the dance of habitat hardened by the head felt mating dance of the hooping cranes in the dark bar where alcohol is spilled on the dance floor drunk on sweat of the dancers touching each other the dance is a mating act meant to prepare the flesh for sex it is where I let loose the rhythm of my musing. The body moves of grinning against the juice of the jukebox that is drinking alone in the corner where the light cannot reach to enrich the music that sinks into an ice cube in the dance. Do not cup me but cup me in the sweat of your or couple me to your throng. I will do no wrong before I am gone to the sins edged enduring on Saturday night and forgiven on Sunday morning by the priest that preached perched in the pulpit of his piety preach about the pitfalls pit alone the holy way. Where women cannot be public preacher in the private church of the eight-sided blonde cross. Point 1 have no other God before me. Point 2 I am that I am. Point 3 do unto other as you will have them to do unto you. Point 4 turn the other cheek. Point 5 an eye for an eye. Point 6 blesses is he that hear the word of the prophecy. Point 7 behold ye all the preaching of the kingdom of God. Point 8 in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. I am a child of the cross crisp and sharp. I cross the counterculture of cruising. I cringe and cry carefully. I crave the crab-like cradle in the sea of crawdads keen to keep the sucking of heads with a kind keel. Kiss me as a kept keeper that whisper a wild warring of wishes wanting to be wise and womanly warm in the womb where I wail wagging the wastage west of the waste of being human. I am a whore whose whole hog of a witch of angels is a weed worth blooming bold by the backlight lit in the buzz bomb of buzzwords being brought and sold by bow-legged buzzards eating from a buckle of bovines milk and mother in a motley morning minding the millwork that make money move the world. I am that I am the notice pine to my skin the slim slates tacked and stalled. Still the will to kill the wind to trill and talk the talkatone death stone to moor. Hallucinogenic function of ancient mentality is evidence that the plausible and gradual control of the sense that nothing is wrong beneath the usual phenomenon of the skin where the sun shed its cloths is a holy act and the air is rich in warmth like St. Louis in junk Junes. Juice of harvested heat home and hampered about the hungry hero that hangs his head on a nail in your door. Come to greet him and let him gild your glory quick and guide the air in the wind turning over on itself. Should I wish that I was his, unseen as the air but everywhere there with a feel of my own everything my home. Here is the good life and I can't get enough of its edge cutting the fine cord that binds me to the knees of the wind with horny hands. It fills me up with glued prayers. It bless me by the skin I wear. The wind tell me that I am alive and not alone in my holding on to the breath that dayeth me. When I first met the wind I didn't think that we would be friends. It was high and motion, and I hung it like a kite on the high branch of a tree. We spoke of peace with its eyes on the prize, and the poet did seek us out to consult which way the winds those blow. In the measure of his poems he was to meter. To know that he had rocked the red writing the rails of his most high art with a sudden flash of insight, the ribbon of his poem came to him connected to the conducting thread at the moment that it is read into someone else's head. It says by the working of the muse that the structure of his consciousness is moved to action automatic, and his afterthought retrieve the necessary nervous system's performance of motor skill with the pen. Sung like jazz singing, its songs full of bird's breath singing for those who understand, and the dark-eyed junco, the black-legged kitty-wake, the Caspian turns flight along the long limb of the murderous muddy Mississippi, flowing past the sight sleepy St. Louis in the dreams of a morning warbler in the understory, where the parlier hythm of an improvisation play call and responds with the syncopation of the wind's blowholes driven by the crossfire of eyelids in the sleepy season that shine on the lips of an yet full of surprise in its heart when the horizon sit down and contemplate. The end of the day now spent on the edge of an aiming sun, kept inside the tight sky of a hero's pocket like water in a basin when the head is still full of the fading dream of a blow for a blow time signature, fighting the counter melodies rooted in the possibility that the gathered season will fall in love with you at the very moment that the cat caches the rat, looking for a foothold in the surprise summer of its greatest need, where weather embrace the docility tongue of the demands trembling in the footsteps left behind by the cobblestones of winter, frozen in the rest of water that can't run to the torrent sea, now embracing the possibility of being fastened to the useless song of evening. In the mind you can see the analog of eternity entirely possible by the actual behavior of a thinking crossroad of a circus of difficulty, with its little abode that abortive thoughts of continually inventing the space of locating your consciousness in the next room, where poets roam with their Ramus material, perplexing to clarifying the mistake of the necessity of the head of music looking down euphorically at the poets who rend it from words, who close their eyes in the sunlight and listen to the working world about them, the imagistic ones slow, spacious, and majestic, to judge the long corridor of the virginal international misunderstanding by the activated ones who wonder wherefore are born the profound sexless question of the voice that obey the face of all evidence found in the schizophrenic physicians of the authority of sound, that do not ask questions about the sunny afternoon sundry with the control of obedience bound around the back end of a dogling identity found in the language of the obedier, understood by the speaker of the conversation of distance, understood by the understudy who constantly reproof the rate, the price to be paid for the sanity found in the world of words, where common wisdom is wrung from the brain of the poets with their secret longing that all is well by man in the point of space from which the voices of poetry emanates, heard by the mouth-tear, drowned by the screaming of the helpless hero, that pay obedient to the profound problem of a neurological command that tells us to do the wrong of a separated action. Even the criminal must obey the rules of love for someone whom they heap their love upon. Even the criminal can be a hero to the masses of meaningful speech, as extreme hazardous nodding against the psychological boundary of normal language with its aphasic arrest of mental function, as arrogant guardian glad and gummy gulping the guillotine of a guerrilla theater played out in the streets that runs riot with crime, a twisted kind of divine forced upon the helpless and the worried, weary, weak, wanting no more than the pacificator placated package of the peace of old age. The old ones are not safe in this society, where actual youth is placed upon a pedantic pedestal, where youth is for sale by the pound around the age of the young hour, bearing witness to the extreme flower, frail only in its beauty, deceptive of Its strength under the old silence of the sun, the juice of it is forever young. It runs astonishingly in the roots that grip the mute ground, taking their stand beside the overflowing dumpster of man's throwaway waste that nature does not make flower and weed please the poet who can see that all growth upon the earth is a divine thing. The thickness of their beauty is strong against man-made things, things to keep us young, things to rely upon, things for sale just to the young, things from whence things come, things as old as languages young with their puns strung among their mother tongue. The man who invented the wheel made the first thing, and it has been uphill since then. The baby born thingless will not remain so for long. The toy that hangs over its cradle sings a baby song even. This is a thing made long, located in the arbitrary space of the head. When read, poems are an abode of thought, of volition, of internal sensation, of exosomatic experiences. Many things can be done without us being conscious of the possible paradoxical discussion, like dancing around in the rain. You pretend that the rain is your friend, that it washes away your sins, even though your skin will not let it. In the rain, moving synchronically into the diachronically motion of space, it does not wait for you to begin the dance of your life, but the rhythm of its fall calls you to let loose in a riot of heat-releasing movement meant to free you for the moment of its music. Reading poetry is a dance of the mind. Within you find the stress meter of time, the downbeat of a rhyme. Poetry is divine knowledge rhythmically woven to endow the spirit. It takes you away from the common speak of the day. It mix and mingle the mental, the emotional. The poet cannot but tell all the secrets of your personal God, that it may free you from the frontal lobe. Their souls are old and a bit odd to the ruling class that will have the masses thoughtlessly mining the muck of their daily minds, steep in trying to get by with no art to enlighten their lives. But the poets have always been rebels. They have always come into the darkness of your daily lives to offer the light to gild you by. They are at odds with the rules set by the controllers. They go the less traveled road and bring you good tidings from the wise who rub their wisdom into their skin, and with it we win. We who have forgotten how to pretend that the modern gods still speak through him. He is the divine southeaster of possession, in tune with the primitive art of poetry. He had labored long in silence to recollect the recollection of the muses, his mistresses, who he begged for guidance when the poetic ecstasy has forgotten to frenzied him up with fury in a wild trance that makes the words dance for nymphs and mythical shepherds and sanitation workers cleaning up the mess of a wasteful creature that leave behind a trail of plastic. All the trees will go to paper, all the oil to cars, the air to smog. We have gotten ourselves tied up in the waste of our hands. Science is both foe and friend, saint and fame. Poetry is of the heart, science of the head. Both is a full part, imparting their wisdom art to have us live the rightful life that we were given for the short spell of time upon the earth. They teach us to do as a giving nature will have us to be willing to praise and preach, define and rhyme, to help and heal all as divine. So be you not weak of mind, and leave your heart not behind when you seek their guidance. As regard the absent of the gods, the absent that rob us of the wondrous nature working the world without regrets. The gods are not dead regardless of what the philosopher said, but some only live behind the churchyard doors. They are dusted off for Sunday morning worship, some only in books and read. It is the poets that give them all free rein, while some priests of gods forestall that there is but one, when each one man is owned to help him bear the trials and tribulations of the flesh. I am a man of many gods, and none is held in more esteem than the rest. The poet cannot afford such a dress to clothe himself in the garb as to favor one god is to deny the density of the social local mind, grown up in the time regional, defined by precept of what is around them. It is not true that one man's god is another man's demon, but it is true that the gods do as nature dictates, and if the need arise, man will be left by the wayside in favor for a heathery haven. But the gods do not give up as easily against our felt belief. They will not beg for your worship. But we that you have forgotten them, we as Judea to the Christ, when we betray with a kiss what we have meant to do. For God decree that someone had to as the Christ had to die to rise again. Judea is my confidant among dead men. He is the chosen one for such. They tack the best man around for the job. He bear the scars in the service of the Lord. The rope burn around his neck is a brand he cannot hide. It seems such a cruel joke that one must betray what he loved most. Who among us have such a conviction as to turn him for a bounty, the head of his Savior? It is only with the confidence of the gods that we can bear the cross of our own death. Song of the singing. A long sinfonia is sounding its suffrage weeping heard by floundering stigma and ovary of the awaited birth of seed to feed the newly weaned cry. My grief on four sides, its roots are deep in the warmth of all the useless fields where the secrets of fingers died on the altar, where poems are burning away their meaning in the holy invasion of the wisdom of the wilderness that is closer to the unearthed silence of the gods, caught by the evidence of the great beyond, where the gods take their rest before the theories of man's little minds that think what it want to think in its drug-induced passion of possession, like our love for the feelings of cognitive imperative rationalism, walking like Christ toward the cross, waiting for a trusting shoulder to rest upon. Gather all the seasons of your needs together and stack them in a row of embracing, suggesting longings approaching the extremely ordinary life of the junk of the everyday, magical charm of sacred water with its responses, method of dealing with the recently dead gone, the way of skepticism where the exaggerated eyes of idols reflects brilliant desires of the zigzagging and embodied common approach of the sanctuaries that dream without a care that you have offered the love of sex on a leaf to eat, with the sweat of a dream slowly flowing down the bridge of your nose, to preserve the rituals of calling on the gods to raise the triumphant grace of their amnesty, found in the place conjured by the wishfulness of saying goodbye to the door that leads the long way around toward the ordinary last holy haunted firmament of the pride of the sea, forever folding itself onto itself in its unparalleled strength of water, where now is the fisher of men and what is the bait on his hook. Heaven and hell is the same place of the earth. We have made them our home, and they will not forget us when we are gone. The way of the dead, we impetrate the world of the dead, and our bed where we are locked in our heads with all of our words meaningless by what is said. When I dream I am in the heaven of my own making, my mind becomes a god, but it is a fleeting thing that quickly fade. When I wake it steal away from me as if I was not meant to see, but having seen I am changed as dreams rewire the brain with self-knowledge, and there is much to know of the self that we keep from ourselves in our waking hours, where the analytic speech of poetry woo us with words that seek to conquer the heart, to short-circuit our guard we put before the world and ourselves, in that the private moment in which poetry is created and the possession that take charge of the soul. Something is transposed into the poem only to be released. In the reading of it waits you to bring yourself to each work of art, and the union is made in the brain and heart. So sell not the poet short, he is doing his artful part mostly without reward other than your jaw that gives him a jolt to know that he had reached the inner soul, and to leave you with a new consciousness, thereby fulfilling his creed to inform and please. Poets are the last prophets of possession. They have trained themselves but run the risk of falling into madness when the gods take control of their souls. Will to know the secrets of the gods. If prophecy be a madness, the madmen they be in the function of creating poetry from the common energy. sun shining over the universal motion of a tear over the aquatic feudal superiority of living within your means, where you keep the pain of putting the cigarette out in my eye when my head is burning. It's time-told truth fit for the telling, the boiling grace of a hardened fist vaunting the obedient broken artillery fit for setting the world afire when we find ourselves missing the primitive violence of the bygone days that cut the head off of a forgotten holy word hiding in the hind quarter of a whole second passing into the obese hour that will never come again, to the divine presence of intermediaries of the far-off gods of bastard thoughts born out of the union of the personal demon of the analog eye and the flashy muscles of the brain. The divine demons that roam about our heads use our muscles to do their biting and leave us to take the blame. It is all the same as the angels do, that to fight within us we have the battleground in which wars for our souls are made. We fight ourselves to do right by the civilized codes handed down through the dead ages. We need to be taught how to be civilized human from the cradle to the grave. When the gods of hosts are preparing to depart from ours lives, some of us shall go gently into the darkness of honor in full common command of the simple death outweighed us all. Some of us will go mad trying to defend ourselves against the complacency of the daily drudgery of being common under the heavy hand of the rulers of a comical commercial society that seeks to keep us in our place, seek to lure us with selling words meant to separate us from our hard-earned cash. The new god in the world, the supporter of greed, have muster their armies for a fight to win our hearts. Chief among their kind is the advertisers who will sell their mother for a profit, but what use is it to place blame less it can afford a change less it can affect the working of the mind. For we alone among the breathing set have made money to use his go between us. Our free will is held in check, hinged in between the spiritualism and the commercialism of the modern world. Some gods have been bought and sold in the marketplace of the mass church. Every Sunday morning on my TV I hear the evangelists, preachers preach for a fee, as if your soul cannot be saved without a donation to the cause. The old are much affected by this plea, for they are closer in age to the heaven that will come when they shed their flesh for a white robe to put on. Lord, when I am dead, Lord, when I am gone, somebody is going to weep, someone is going to mourn. But just give me that white robe to put on. My granddad, confined to his bed, used to sing all day long till his breath smelled of the sun. Then one quiet night his heaven came. He left behind his tools and his wallet. My great-granddad Patton, who lived to be 103, recently went away, her God to meet. In her lifetime she saw the change of many things, but she never lost her faith, even as she questioned why she should live so long as to see her contemporaries die along the wayside. And now she is gone into the emptiness of silence. She is gone to her high home of heaven. She had joined the ranks of the ancestry, and now I have someone new in which to pray to rest in everlasting peace. Your God to meet, look you after me. And I be true to poetry, help me to stand on my feet of rhyme and its measure of time. I am a free will sort of the thought breath of the long line of the Yahweh and the Muses and all. What can I speak in the name of the most high powerful gods of old? I am in the fold of the faithful gathered around the common dead. My pen is an idol that speak of the fertility of the embodiment of poetry, of the parath years of dancingness. I am the poet of what we are and yet to be. I am all poet and part priest, the philosopher of the written words. I take my invention and what is heard in the street of the holy word. I listen and learn, lend for free my poems. I am not alone in the mythical magic of my song. We poets are profound, for you when you hope to find the working of the poetic mind at our disposal is the techniques of all the ages. We will not be led by the human demons into the demonic understanding of doomed glory. We hope only to help you to find some meaningful identity of yourself in the world along your lonely voyage in the skin to teach you that all men are kin and the love of neighbors is the love of the self and kind. Sometime we set aside our rhymes, a mostful tool to catch you. By the breath we wooed you in youth from your sins, we who knew the battles of the hero, our struggles for your psychic maturity in an ordered world that had grown rigid and out of touch with the individuals. Hear you own son playing as you walk alone, lock to the rhythm of your steps down the streets of Can. Music crafted for the masses to move you by the poets. Take time to find out just what it means to be alive in this motion of time, the ecstasy of the thing, the link between God and man. We are seized by the possession and our unconscious thrust to quench you, to drench you, to take on your solitude and suffering that you may find wisdom there. We have returned from the dark and wilderness to tell you of our adventures and voyages, to tell you of the transcendences that await you beyond the common anxiety of the everyday, tell you of the unifying experience of poetry we seek to solidify as the common bound between men and gods. By faith of purpose in our rhymes in you we seek to find the inner nature of ourselves, to know the brutal element that would wound our flesh. For all his strength man is a fragile creature of flesh and bones, he fall to insanity to go it alone be. He Gilgamesh, Cucullin or Achilles or any man of high or low degree from myth or flesh, be he hero back from the war or baby arm, be he weak or strong taking company or alone in his journey, be him right or do him wrong, each man of his life can be made a song on the poet's tongue. O thou alone to be one, grapping at the key that inform peace of piety and place our poems wait your coming sung, clinkety clanking rhythmically to the solar winds held in the breath of the pixie, pixelating its warm laughter to the violently breaking of silence that hummed like a steady rain radiating out to fill the universe of man's earth-bound longing to be a part of an universal community seated in the far-off space with its promises supporting the sustainable noise of life in the somewhere islands of the deep destined destiny of never giving up the ghost for a confessing of heaven caught under the skin of a chill when fear take you over. Promise to take me over by the mystery of your love given over freely to the man when the night is driving me mad, waiting on my dreams to fill me up all breathless and sniffing out the silverback ancestry of the missing link that find itself along again but fit to be seen in the buried bones of yesterday where birds fight for territory and I cry out the name of a narrow god of the legends of making a sad song sung and surveying by the light of a steep passage as old in age as what it is that man want out of life when there is nothing to say and we must go our separate way. The power flows from Don Quixote, from Don Juan, not from Donald Trump, but a bump in history of so much as that a hair hole from which grows greed that only a few knows. Not all of us seeks to be rich beyond our wildest dreams, not all of us wished you on many things such as the loyalty of men to do our bidding. I am one content to sit along the roadside and watch the flow of demons and saints, heroes, tricksters and shamans going about their duty as if placed in the peg holes of the society's making of which we poets are born. To rebel against the artist that grind the gifted down to a nudge-blooded knob that cannot open the door that lead to the self. Be you better than the society that you make. Each man is a founding father of the life he was given, each man a friend of nature, each man carry within himself the demons and saints that shaped him, each man wait for the hero to take possession of him, to test the metal of his making. Some are anonymous hero of their circle, contemporary philosophers of the mundane, some are insane and antagonist of the ruling society that has lost its classical virtues and ethical nobility, a society that does not recognize the rugged ruins all about it, the falling bricks at the feet of the poor, the overgrown cities enriched in crime, and the conventional behavior of a civilization in decline. These are the concern of my rhyme, they are the concern of the poet. He must concern himself, engage himself rather than escape himself from his social's reality. This must be his pride-producing prerogative, an aid to pair both God and man, to do no harm by his wonderful words wrought from within the working works of his mind and time. Each poet represent his subcultured private culture, his race riding round the streets steeped within the memories of his parent. Each poet represent his religion, rites perform as a prayer in the night. Each poet represent his sex informed by the senses wet as sweat and the musk in the act of mating with lust lasting long. Each poet represent the art of being human, a hired, humble, and helping all men. Each poet represent himself, the one in the loud and crowed land, listening when he can do what is being said, and how the said was made to lay in the ear. His perceptive actions is to give of himself with a heroic intensity, to rebel against the status quo of being ordinary in a world of hostility and hatred that men can make against the new knowledge of himself. Sung the sepulchre tree stand voice on reaching and forever reaching its strong tailwind to the brow of a farmer plowing the field of an egret's heartache, where the wood duck are nursing in their nesting in Kennedy forest of the thick undergrowth of the many birds birthing birds. In the heart of spring, while Mr. Jack Bird and Paul Terrace and David Street Lewis engage in a managed trios, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the Spirit, the body, and the soul, pushing a wedding vow. Is three the holiest of all number, or is it seven, or the four winds, four corners of the world, where the flowers seem friendly enough, as friendly as the skein of a midnight chill, with its noise of chill bumps on the skein of the sky, popping out like stars in the crushed sky of a higher dream, where love dislike roses, feeling like a knife cut sharp and cleaner than the dull blade of a used razor, ragging the forgotten air in the lungs of a loving that rupture, the strange forever sex that cannot keep our heart together, the sweat of the body engaged in making your love a lifetime of togetherness. It's no easy thing, even when tied by a ring. Love must be made anew day by day beyond the I love yous, and you need not be cruel to be kind. Under the blessing of the sun shining like a scrambled egg sat you in the island of a shadow, the listening post of new birth, the mother's son of a precise blackbird that knows it need not sleep in the dirt. That birth it swears as easily as the breath and breathing according to the rhythms of the sun, where a man goes home to empty bottles, and that one locked door that he weep before the door is dreaming of the prophet of the sun. The man wished to run and run till he had escaped the remembrance of the last kiss given in the hour before morning. Run away, this isn't the time for that ball and chain, time for the emerging murmur that threatens itself when I want to talk to you. This is not the time to follow the significant image of demons under the dome of the head, not the time to say that the heroes are forever dead, not the time for the manifestations of nature's fecundities to be cursed when we cannot agree who will get the biggest share. It is not the time to dress Pandora's box with a pretty bow and offer it as a gift to the world as if it was a pill to heal all ills. It is not the time to put out Prometheus' fire with the tears of the sorrowful. It is not the time for the destructive force of money meant to save your soul from the fundamental ambiguous achievement of hunger in a fat world brimming over with food. It is not the time to reject the agency of the sacred being hiding on the dark side of the moon. It is not the time for the roguish trickster mysteriously divined by the madman's attempt to suffer his rivals with the telling truth of his heart about the suppressive society's subversive instincts masquerading as the politic of art, it is not the time to free the deadly ego that undergoes a God-forsaken goose-step of a golden goo-goo-head governess taking care of the children of tomorrow. It is not the time for the poet to be used by the force of his creativity, but to use it in the service of the flesh. It is not the time for the poet to be alienated from his society, for him to feel as outcast as Raskolnikov, as Mersault, and the invisible man hidden in the basement of light, the lonely voyagers that find their society stalled shallow in its slanted bed with its tyrannical authority, never spent but renews with each dollar that makes the men worthy of their praise, as if money can save the soul in achieving the rigid holy goal of the task of the hero. It is not the time for the shaman to resist the suffering that he must endure with its mixture of love and fear that open the human mind to the possibility of intellectual wisdom that seizure the mental struggle at its source. The hero often is slain by the followers that he did save from the impossible fulfillment of the most significant supreme normality that rule their lives. The humanized demons and the demonic human become one and the same in the game that we play, in the mental, physical, and spiritual suffering of the visions that transforms the inner nature and enable the reformer to carry within himself the seeds of a symbolic rebellion. Nature, the brutal element of the battle waged for the soul of man, is calculated to repel the shocking primary hostility pushed against the gods that we would have to cleanse the city of the beauty of crime committed in the solitude and lonely crafty suffering of an inspired envy toward the devotion imposed by the sort of man that used Puritan ethic to keep us in our places with our rationalistic and religious didacticism, with our nostalgic for the chivalry composed of the qualities of gentility. We astounded the gods into wishing us to witness the wickedness that defeats the soul of an old strength, displaying little individuality that knows the way to go toward the fulfillment of a chivalric questing sun, wishing chlorophyll to glow to the rhythmic green that knows the living face of a secret god of men of little worth, whose sins are countless as the sands of the sea. The obese fat of the priest graciously cannot heed the wisdom of the obelisk in the season of sand, where the irritated dryness is held in the hands, and the prostitutes of iron colors leading you around the silence holy darkness of the pyramid of Giza, robbed of its treasure, disfigured by the winds of time in the forgotten doubt of the tongue and the public face of the great body of knowledge, tattooed with unpublished poems of blemishes, disfigured by the willing hands that dominate the unparalleled concealed wisdom of old, buried in the hanging gardens of Babylon, where the obsolete tomorrow interrupts the present of today, while the past sleeps in the idols that speak of ancient kingdoms and delicate fugitive priests of a recumbent bull of the god-side ancient mentality, written in mysterious meters on the skein of a long tradition of association between the enduring supernatural knowledge of the prophets and the linguistic alliteration of poor poets, half asleep, half dreaming. In the making of their wares, once the poets were holy, once they was full of singing songs of poems, now the pitch glissando notes of the scale of the speech of the streets, where the eroded mid-melody of the instrumental hemispheres of music in their idle lap stands waiting the watchful answers of storms in the cupped praying hands of Sister Grace, when the brother of night descend down to the knotted light of the street lamps glow. All of nature is for show, all the breath of trees I see under the bathing sun, the only one with its roar of light tumultuous in its multiple warmth of upheaval, crumbling tenderly, extending over the bursting region of the world's stained glass of trees. The sun witnessed the doing of man with his heroism of myth and legend, deepened by his significant humanism. It is not anti-heroic, non-existent, predicated upon The notions of the human animal below the stars who have named the sun sun and the moon moon sol or sur and the full wolf and worm moon looks down upon the civil chaos that is the instrument of the gods sent to punish the conventional expression of a parochial weakness glorious in death. What becomes of us when we die, when we give up the ghost, when the reputation of our common sense is all that is left of us, when the decision of our choice is no longer torn between love and duty? Know we well what becomes of the flesh. It returns to the earth, but where does the spirit and the soul goes when they no longer have the home of our bones? What becomes of our materialistic longings? Such questions are tied up in the ideal of ourselves. Death is a sort of escape. It is the end of all, and with no heaven to end, save for those who keep their belief tied against the tragedy of their lives lived among the drastic changes in man's psychological ideal of himself. Although still he think himself in possession of the soul of a lesser god upon the earth, commerce has become the theology of man, the almighty dollar, the new cross in the climate of opinions springing from Americus, where things don't have the particular necessities of a well-lead life. Man's innate capacity, with his sensitive organism still tied to the earth by the umbilical cord of his flesh, suffering from a fatal delusion. Our ego is misled by the dark ambiguity of our individual need to go it along, even though our half-known self constantly cries out to be made whole by a God that knows now is the time to be bold as concerned the significance of salvation with its dramatic limitations of unexpected knowledge. Now is the time to gather all your rhymes in the service of the gods. Now is the time to heap the miseries of man onto the cart of life. Now is the time to know that we all are chained by the fringe of attention that sustain us. Now is the time to expel the cold and tragic knowledge that represent the elites. Now is the time to emancipate our general tendencies toward the historical concept that we have a higher order among creatures of the earth. Now is the time that the major test of truth is to found in the life that abound around us. Now is the time for the appearance of the new hero. Long-winded on romanticism and coarse jest, echoing the incantation that will paradoxically direct the arch trickster toward the new man of power. Now is the time to embody reverence for the relationship of man to his God. Now is truly the time for the misstates of capitalism to be relieved of its duty in favor of a new humanity that waits to view us all as brothers.